Welcome back to Misunderstood. I'm your host, Rachel Yucatel. Well, today we have a bucket list guest, someone who, for the last year and a half, I have been trying to get on this show. When I created this show, I had a list of people that I felt like had been reduced to a headline, and I wanted to hear their story. Well, Lorena Bobbitt is one of them. If you don't know who Lorena Bobbitt is, in the early hours of June 23rd, 1993, 30 years ago, just about, Lorena became famous for taking an 8-inch knife from her kitchen and cutting off her husband's penis. She then proceeded to get into a car, throw it into the bushes, and sort of disappear. Her husband, John Wayne Bobbitt, ended up getting the, member, you should say, reattached, and both of them were basically on trial. He got off, and she also was found not guilty from temporary insanity. Now, when you ask people to, what they thought of her name, when you say Lorena Bobbitt, people usually cover their private parts. People said, oh my God, that woman's crazy. And that got me thinking, why? Why was she crazy? And if she was crazy, she would have been found guilty. So what I did is I spent the last year trying to get a hold of her. I finally got a hold of her. I flew all the way to Washington, D.C. I sat down with her for 2 hours, and what I heard was shocking to me. This is a woman who brought up terms that I had not heard of before, like marital rape. I mean, I thought that when you're married, how could it be rape, right? I heard terms that I've never heard in a relationship. We're going to get to them in this interview, but I want you to listen up because this is important for you to know. You may have a lot of opinions about what happened 30 years ago. This woman made all sorts of headlines. Everyone wanted to know what was happening and who was going to get in trouble. Did her husband beat her up? And did she retaliate? Or was she just a crazy Hispanic woman, from Ecuador, wherever? And, she was just nuts and did something insane because she got jealous. Well, we get to the bottom of it in this interview. Lorena Gallo is what she goes by now, has spent her entire life advocating for domestic violence. I want you to be aware of that as well. So obviously this changed this woman's life. She was a young 24-year-old woman when this happened who barely spoke English. Now she's a very educated woman who's changed her whole life around based on this one thing. But just imagine for a second what that's like when you walk into a room and your name is Lorena Bobbitt, the kind of jokes you had to endure, the kind of, stigma you had to endure, the fact that she's had a boyfriend or a relationship for as long as she has. I'm just so impressed because you would think that would have been hard. So it was my honor and my privilege. And I really am happy to bring this conversation to you with Lorena Bobbitt. Lorena, thank you so much for joining me here. We are in Washington, D.C. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course.
It's an honor.
Do people just flip out when they see you? I mean, I feel like from my generation especially, you are someone that your story has resonated with me personally because I'm someone who's been through what I assume you've been through, which is where, the media and people who know your story have reduced you to a headline. And it's been very hard to share with people who you really are because they're so stuck in the thought of what this narrative is. And it's affected my entire life for the rest of my life from a moment of what happened. And I can imagine that is what you have gone through. And I've always felt very empathetic and like I know you because while our stories are so different, the feeling is the same and what happened is still the same. And so, you were someone that when I started this show, I started it there was a list of maybe 8 or 9 people that I started at 4, that I was like, these are the people that I feel like need to have their voice heard. And you were one of them. So it's like such an honor to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciate your kind words. And like you said, people don't, at that time, obviously in my case, happened 30 years, 35 years also, as a matter of fact, 35 years ago. And they don't really quite freaked out. I was surprised to see how welcoming I was among women, especially. And whenever I couldn't even go to a grocery store because I will be recognized. Because my face was in every tabloid and every media. I mean, it was like the case on international headlines and international news. So I had to leave that at that moment. And it was very difficult for me to actually get out of the house and not being recognized. So, and, after being vilified, after being dehumanized and sexualized, I guess, it's very bad. It had an impact in my life.
Right.
But I learned to cope and learn to maybe retrain my brain, through all this. It was very traumatic. It was very difficult to go through that in my life. But at the same time, I have to live a life. I have to regain my confidence, my self-esteem, and I have to regain, I guess I compartmentalized a lot of those things, but at the meantime, I didn't want to be detached for what happened because, the more I talk about it, like I am a facilitator in shelters and I do speeches when I go and talk to abuse survivors and victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. That's exactly what I do. I retell the story. The more I tell my story, the more comfortable I have become telling my story. And the story I find out that I talk to them, it gives them hope and to gain their self-esteem and to also help them to get away from that abusive relationship.
Right.
And that's what I do. That's exactly what I do. But at the meantime, it was very hard and very difficult to accept the fact that I was not only judged in the court of law, but I was also judged on the court of the public opinion.
Right.
And it was very...
That's almost harder sometimes.
Yes, and it was. And it was so hard, very difficult. My family was there for support and everything. My friends were there for support, but they not always didn't know how to help me. And so that was very traumatic for me. But at the same time, like I said before, I have to become myself stronger and recover my dignity and recover the personal agency that I've lost. People wrote stories about me that they weren't true. They weren't necessary. It was just their opinion. And that's what I want people to understand, that there's a story, there's a human being behind all of these headlines and the tabloids stories.
Yeah.
And, it was very difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, there's so much to unpack because everything you just said is so important. And, everyone thinks that they know you. You hear the name Lorena Bobbitt, and it comes with just a single headline, really. And I know that people don't know the whole story. But what I do want to ask you just off the top, when I've asked people, or I've said I'm coming to interview Lorena Bobbitt, they say, oh, I know her. I remember her. She's the one that cut off her husband's penis. Period.
Yes.
They don't know all the ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Right.
What would you say is the essence of the story? If you heard John and Lorena Bobbitt, oh yeah, I remember them, what would you say is the story?
There's a lot. There's basically a young women at the time, because I got married when I just turned 20 years old. But the essence of the story is I was a victim of domestic abuse and sexual assault by my ex-husband, John Bobbitt. And a lot of people don't know my story.
Right.
And thank God I have done documentaries, I have done movies about my life that, it is important to show what I come from and what the essence of the story is or was.
It's not what people think. A revengeful, angry woman a jealous woman who took her anger out on a husband who wasn't giving her attention, or who was making her jealous or any of those things. So I want to talk about that for a minute because I do want people to hear your side.
Yes.
So before we get into that, just talk to me about your upbringing. You were not born in America. You were born in Ecuador, right?
Yes, I was born in Ecuador, and my parents moved to Venezuela when I was about 7 years old.
Okay.
I'm the oldest of 3 children, and my mother and father went to Venezuela to find a better life, to find opportunities, just like people come to America to live the American dream, right? And so I was left with my aunt and my parents' family, my abuelita, which is grandma in Spanish. And they were raising me while my parents actually work hard in Venezuela, in Caracas, in order to save money to bring us with them to Venezuela.
Yeah.
And so me and my sister went back. My brother was born in Venezuela. And so we started a life there. And by the time I was 15 years old, my parents, we don't come from a lot of money, obviously. We're very humble. Our humble beginnings started in Ecuador. We're poor. And so I remember my mom and dad always work hard and always hustling. And so by the time that we have a big tradition of when we are 15 years old in Latin America, it's called the quinceañera. And it's like the sweet 16 in the United States. But we didn't have enough money. And I told my parents, I said, look, I mean, we don't have to have it's not a big deal. I like to travel. And I like to go to see my cousins. I have a lot of family here in the United States, and my family and my father said, okay, we can save some money and send you to visit, the cousins and the family here in Virginia, United States. And I said, that will work perfect for me. So it took us 2 years to save money.
Really?
And so for me,
what did they do for a living? Your parents? Yeah.
My mom was cleaning houses.
Okay.
And my father was a dental technician.
Wow.
He made dentures. And so that's what they make the living.
The living, yeah. Okay.
So it took us a long, time to save for them and for me to receive that present. So when I came here, I just fell in love with everything about the United States, the culture, the language, English, and everything. It's just so pretty, right? And the opportunities that America was offering. And so I was 17, and then I wanted to stay. And my father said, no, you have to come back and finish your high school. You can't just stay there. Mm-hmm. And so I said, okay. So my father convinced me to go back to Venezuela. And so by the time that I graduated from high school in Venezuela, I asked again to come back. And I was determined to come back here to the United States. And, just because I like it so much. And I see the opportunities, the work opportunities my cousins, my family had here. And in Venezuela, it was very difficult to living, it was democracy back then, before Chavez, communist and socialism started. But so I see the difference, how every year was progressing into a more difficult way of living in Venezuela. So I said, well, chances are that I am not going to have a good future here. I better just go and live my life in the United States and look for this American dream, etc. And so I was very excited when I came back here at 18 years old. And so my cousins helped me. I stay in my cousin's house in Virginia, and then so for some reason I just wanted to work, and I applied for a student visa. They said, no, you have to study. Your main goal here is to study and be educated. And so I said, okay, let's do that. But the problem was that when you have a student visa, you won't be able to work because you're supposed to be a full-time student.
Okay.
So I had my student visa, and then I said, well, I can survive. I need money to eat, to buy clothes for myself to survive. And I just feel bad that my cousins were supporting me. And so they were like, okay, I can find you a job. And so I find this job as a nanny, which eventually she was my boss, and she had this nail salon. And, eventually I became a manicurist and work at her shop. And so I started to work with her, and she was paying me under the table, right? Because, obviously I could not, work having the student visa. So she had a child, and I just loved the child. He was 4 years old, and so I was taking care of him. And while I went to school, and at the same time, I was just, oh wow, I just earning money, which wasn't too much because, she was paying me cash, but she also offered me a living area in her house.
Yeah.
And so it was like room and board.
Yeah.
And
and a little bit,
a little bit of that.
Side. Okay.
So the little thing that I have was like, okay, are you gonna say this to send money to my parents, because I knew they were struggling in Venezuela all the time. And so, the dollar converted into the Bolivar was a lot more money. And so every time I was just helping my parents. So during the time that I was here, my cousin said, well, I cannot have you, unfortunately, anymore because, I work so much. And, she was going through divorce and, a lot of things happening. So she introduced me to this family who eventually became my immediately family here. So I live with them.
Okay.
All this happened in Northern Virginia, right? And so I said, okay, so I moved from her house and to live with this family, which wonderful. She had this family they're from Ecuador. So the culture, Spanish culture was there and everything. She had 2 daughters, all 1 year older than me, and another one younger than me. So I would just fit right in the middle, right? So, and they have an extended family. Oh my God, it was amazing how much family they have. I mean, so I met them, and every time that there was a party or Christmas party, they did not need to invite anybody else away from their family because it was so big of a family that they just said, okay, this is enough people. And so within the family, there's, the cousins, and, one of the cousins said, you old enough to go to a bar? And I said, well, not really, because I was 19. And so, but I did have a fake ID, okay? And I said,
so you were already
I had a fake ID. And I said, I want to. So, yeah. And I said, okay, I can use my fake ID. So whatever, we're going to go to D.C. And then she changed her mind for some reason. And she decided to go to the I Club, which is a Marine and Quantico base in North Virginia. And I said, well, okay, I guess I still need my fake ID. I didn't have any fancy clothes or nothing. I just had a pair of jeans and a T-shirt. And I said, and she was like, oh, you're fine. You don't need to change and nothing. And so I said, okay. So we left. And then that's when I met this handsome Marine named John Bobbitt, right? And so I was like, well, and I was very shy. I was, I grew up, being Catholic, raised Catholic. And the woman that I was living in, the family, they're strict Roman Catholic. I mean, we went to church every Sunday. We just, the religion was really instilled in me, so strong. And so I said, okay. And then he asked me for my phone number. And I said, no, I better not, because, no, my English was broken.
I was going to ask you how good
broken English. I couldn't understand, him too well. It was noisy. The music was a nightclub, right? And my friend was like, well, you got to be careful because, you don't want to give away your telephone number. And I said, yeah, you're right. It's not my telephone number. It's the house that I was living in. Phone number is not my personal phone number. Remember, this is all in late 80s, 1990s, right? Where there's no cell phone.
Right.
No, now,
It's like
the technology is
hanging
totally,
on the wall
yes,
with the
hanging,
long cord.
yes, and that's
Everyone
it.
can hear. Yeah.
Right. And every time, like when he called, as a matter of fact, Mrs. Castro was the one answering, one of the girls answering. And so, anyways, so I was very shy, and then he asked me to dance, and I said, no, I don't dance, which I lied because I love to dance. I mean, I grew up dancing. My parents dance. I learned from them. I love dancing. So, but I was very shy, and, and so, and I was a virgin. I was just, this is like, wow, this is so new to me. I don't know what love was. And so I was like, wow, maybe I should give him a chance. And so I gave him the phone number.
You did.
And that was
life changed.
A mistake.
So how long did he court you? How long did you guys date?
So I was like less than 10 months, I would say. Yes.
And how did you communicate? Did you get better with speaking English?
Yes, because through the time, the little boy that I was taking care of, he was learning English and I was learning from him.
Okay.
So sometimes I was like, okay, so I was speaking like a 4-year-old, and I'm like, no, this is not gonna work. So I have to learn English I took English as a second language at one of the community colleges, and so I started to, just turn the TV and just to practice. Watch news, whatever it was on TV at that time. So just to practice reading the newspaper, reading magazines, just get interaction with American people.
Right.
And so when I was going to college, the community college, I was actually, learning about people. But what happened was that there's a lot of international students there.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot of, there's like, for example, I remember, it was funny, I met this girl and I didn't know, she was from Brazil and obviously they speak Portuguese. So the way how we communicated was like, I was speaking Spanish, she was speaking Portuguese, because Portuguese and Spanish are very close to each other. So we understood each other.
Right.
It's just kind of wild, but we understood each other even though we were speaking different languages. So, and so I learned English eventually, obviously.
Right.
And still my, kind of broken and kind of didn't really understood much. And, whenever I have like a question or I just look at a dictionary. I used to carry a little dictionary with me. So,
Smart.
So that helped me.
Yeah. So then was it an immediate thing where you guys got very close? Explain what your relationship was like at the beginning. Did he kind of become your family then? Did you want to marry him because you were so in love with him, or did school end and you needed to go home?
So when the semester were ending, I was paying a lot of money because I was considered out of town.
Okay.
And so, oh my God, it was so hard to go back to school because, it just, one credit was like $300 or $600 per credit, and math was 6 credits. And so I needed to make a lot of money. So I stopped school and then to, save some money to go back to school. So while I was doing that, John was in the radar. So he was always, around me and so calling me and wanted to become more involved, as a boyfriend, girlfriend kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So, and he would go to the houses that I was working as a nanny, or he would go to the house that I was living with the family that was my family away from my family here. Mm-hmm. So he will go and visit, and then he became more like welcoming, and he was very charming. He was very kind. He was very handsome. I was in love with his blue eyes, and he represented, this man that I would like to marry him eventually. He was very kind, very, very. He was funny too in ways that only he can make jokes and everything. It's just and so he was very charming around people too, and so people like him. The people who did not was kind of fun of him was the 2 girls that I was the family.
Yeah, they didn't like.
They did not like him for some reason. I don't know. I think they saw something that I didn't see, because sometimes in all the time, every time I would go out, he will forget his wallet, and he would yes. So I was like, I never really catch that up. Like, like I never have a boyfriend.
Right.
He was my first boyfriend. So I didn't really know what to expect on a relationship. And I wasn't, I didn't grow up. I was the first of the girls. So I didn't have a big sister telling me, hey, this is how men are. This is how boys are.
Right.
And so I never really have that. And my mom was always busy working. So she never really took the time to actually taught me, a healthy relationship between a boy and a girl, a man and a woman, right? The only thing I had was my parents' example being married for so long. And I thought, well, this is marriage. I'm just going to go ahead and this is the rest of my life, my marriage. And that's just going to stay.
And it sounds like you were used to making a little bit of money and doing, giving it to other people, sending it to your parents. So it probably didn't affect you if he forgot his wallet and you had to pay for things.
Right. It was like that. I mean, it's like, well, money comes and go. I was living paycheck through paycheck. And so in the little money that I had, I knew I had to save it for school when I had to come back and save enough to take one math class or a history class or something that I needed to. So it was a very slow process, my education here, that it got frustrated. And I said, you know what? I needed to make more money. So I knew that the lady who I was working for her, taking care of a child, had a business, had a manicurist business, a salon. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to ask her if I can, become a manicurist at one of the salons.
Did you have to go through training, or she just taught you?
So in Virginia, as long as you have a training, you become grandfather. Because you have a training. Yes, I had to go to school eventually. And then and present that. I didn't really have to go to school for nails, but somebody trained me, but I have to take a test.
Got it.
So in order to get my license. And so I did that, and I became licensed manicurist nail technician, they call it. And so I was working for her, and I was making a lot of money. Remember, I didn't go to school, I didn't graduate college. At that time, in the 1990s, I was earning $35,000 to $40,000, which was an equivalent of now of $85,000 now these days. So it was a lot of money. It was comfortable.
Yes.
And I was very proud of me. I think that was one of the most proud of things that I, make a living for myself. I was more independent, and I was getting somewhere. And I had a job, and wow, what else can you ask? I mean, you're living basically the American dream here. But John was always in the picture, and so he became my boyfriend. And eventually, he was a Marine, and it was kind of weird now that I talk about it. He was working at the Marine Club, Quantico Base. I'm sorry, and he was the lifeguard in the pool.
Okay.
And so when he invited me to go to swim, and I went, and so he found a ring at the bottom of the pool, and that ring, somebody else's ring, became my engagement ring. And he said, look what I found. And then it was this golden ring with a bow. And I said, oh, that's pretty. But then he came out, and I was at the edge of the pool, and then he goes and he kneeled on me, and I was like, what the heck are you doing? And he said, would you become my wife? I want to marry you.
Wow.
Just like that. And I was like, I didn't know what to say, but I said,
so this obviously wasn't planned. He found the ring.
No, he was, yes. Yeah.
And decided to propose.
He found it, and he proposed it, right?
Did he ever get you a real ring?
No.
Oh, wow.
No.
Do you still have that ring?
No.
Okay. All right, go. All right, go on. That's fascinating.
So that, and then I went and told Mrs. Castro, the family that I was living in, and I said, look, this is what's happening. And she freaked out. She was
in a good way or a bad way?
And maybe both, because I can see her face of shock. And the girls were like, oh my God, no. And then the husband was very quiet. He was like, he was just laughing. He was like, "Oh my God, that's so good," and he was very, very sweet. And then Mrs. Castro said, "We have to call your mother. We have to come. We have to bring her here because this is getting somewhere that I cannot handle." This, if you get married, you get pregnant. So all of this, she was taking care of me like I was her daughter, even more because of their responsibility was more, right? Yeah. And so, she was like, "Oh, okay." So she came, my mother came and visited. And I remember she came around Thanksgiving one time. No, I'm sorry. She came. This is different. I'm getting confused with the timing here because it was, oh my God, forgive me, it was a long time ago.
Okay.
So I have to remember. So she came and then she stayed at her cousin, and then she came and visited me for like a week or so, and then
did she like John?
She. I think so. Yeah, he was very likable among people, and so but he didn't understand. They didn't understand because obviously my mom doesn't speak English and so Spanish, and so Mrs. Castro advised me she said, well, you have to make it more formal because how are you going to tell your mom that you just engage? And it's like, well, it's not like I was getting married right away. And so we went to this ice cream place, and I told John, I said, "John, I was advised that, I'm going to take off my ring and you're just going to, just pretend again that you're asking me so my mom can understand this." And so
like act it out.
Yes. And so I told him that, and then he went along, and then my mom was like, "Oh, okay. Okay." So it was more formal, having a parent present there and stuff like that.
That's sweet.
So yeah, it was very sweet. And then we ate the ice cream and so yeah.
So at the beginning, there was no red flags. You guys were in love.
There was no red flags. There was no red flags.
He was good to you. You felt like he loved you.
Yes.
Do you think he loved you for real?
Yes, I think so. I think so. I can say that.
And so you were dating about 10 months and then you get married.
So we were dating for about 10 months and we got married.
Okay. And then you moved in together.
Yes, we moved in together. I was still, we moved into an apartment. The first apartment we lived in was very, very small. Just a room. It's a studio apartment. There's no room division. There's just a kitchen and a living room, and like whatever you put the bed is your place to sleep. That's it. So we were there for like a week. And so when we were there in that apartment, a tiny apartment, I have a call from her mother. Oh, his mother. I'm sorry, from John's mother, which actually it wasn't his biological mother. It was the aunt that she raised him, and so. And he was like, "Oh, hi, I heard you just moved into a new place, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Yeah, we just tried to start a new life, whatever." And then, so as a couple, so he said, "Can I talk to John?" And so I said, "Okay, your mom wanted to talk to you." And he was talking, and all I heard was like, "Uh-huh, yes, uh-huh." And that was it. So the next thing I know was like, okay, so we're going to go the weekend to Niagara Falls. And I said, "Oh, okay, because my mom wanted, she heard that we just got married. And so she wants to throw, my family wanted to throw us a wedding party, whatever." And I said, "Okay." And so I packed my summer white dress that I bought, like a TJ Maxx or Marshall's, this department discount store. And then I said, "Okay." And I had this flower that I made it myself. I went to Michael's and I just, crafted together. Yeah. And so the 80s and the 90s, we were wearing big rings and stuff like that. And everything was just nice, right? So, and I just packed that. And he packed his, I think it's called blue dress with marine dress blues or whatever it's called, in marine uniform.
Right.
Very handsome. And then, so we got there. When we got to Niagara Falls, I said, "Where are we?" And he said, "We're at the church." And so I was like, "My goodness." And I have shorts on and I have a tank top because it was summertime. We drove there and he opened the door and there was nobody at the church. No one. And I said, maybe we're like early or maybe, I hope it's not late. But he said no. So we went to the house and they were very, they were living in areas where I guess you have, okay, so they are from Niagara Falls, but they were camping in Canada.
Okay.
So we had to cross the border. And remember, I was just had the student visa. I was, my immigration papers were in the works because I just got married. And so my paperwork of becoming a citizenship was in process.
Okay.
So I didn't have a passport. I didn't have anything, but John just tried to cross the border. And I said, wow, this is kind of scary. I didn't realize that knowing and coming from another country, I knew that you have to have a passport. Yeah. And then he just went. And the police came following us. And it was the immigration, from Canada, and said, "What are you guys doing?" And whatever he said, the police officer was upset. He pulled me out of the car and said, "We're going to have to stay here." And they detained me for like, my God, it was like 8 hours. Tried to see where I come from, that, why would I cross the border without a passport? And they investigate him. He was a Marine. It was really bad. I mean, so I think the communication with him was a red flag. But I didn't know that and I said, well, I wish you would have told me. I will be more prepared.
Right.
Same thing with the church. We were supposed to be there a day before. We were late one day. So when we finally got to the camping ground, the parents were upset because we were a day later to go out for the church.
So they were trying to surprise you.
They were trying to surprise us. But and I said, well, there's no communication with your mom. I just answered the phone, but she didn't say anything to me. She talked to John, So that kind of thing. And so they throw a little, party in the campground and everything. And I had to they bring a cake. And so it was sweet. It was nice. By the time that the party was over, he decided to go. He didn't tell me where to go. He decided to go with the boys, with his brothers. And I came back and I talked to the mother. I said, where's John? I mean, it's been gone for 5 hours. And so, and I need to talk to him. I need to know what's happening. He went to a place that in Canada is, I think is not illegal to have sex. So he went to a strip club and have a lot of, ladies who sleep around with. And I did not.
Brothel.
Yes, and I did not know that.
This was right after you got married.
This is right after I got married. I have no idea he went into that. So when he came back, I asked her, I said, where did you go? He didn't tell me. His brother was the one who said something. And I said, well, you know what? I am tired of this. I was very upset. I want to go back home, back to Virginia. And I said, I'm just going to, drive this car, whatever.
Yeah.
So I packed my bags and I said thank you to the family for everything, for the party that they throw us, blah, blah, blah. And that's one of the most famous pictures that you see was of him and I dressed as, without me, the white dress, and he has this Marine suit on. And that was at the ground.
Oh, wow.
That was our wedding party. And so I went back and to the car. And
So that wasn't necessarily a happy time.
it was not a happy time. It was not a happy time because I didn't know that he was going to act that way.
Right.
And then, so I just feel like, very odd. It was really an odd place to be too. And so I didn't know how to react to it. So when we come back to the car, I saw extra bags in there. And it was his brother coming to Virginia. And I figured, okay, we're going to give him a ride to Virginia. And little did I know, he was moving in with us.
Oh, wow.
And so
things changed when you guys got
changing for the worse.
So, okay, what's interesting about your story is we mentioned before, people know what happened. They know the act, but they don't know about the domestic violence. They don't know about the history, about the why.
Right.
And they focus on just the act.
Yes.
So when did the abuse start?
So when we came back to the apartment and his brother Todd came with us and I said, okay, I would like to celebrate. And I wasn't happy that his brother came and lived with us in that tiny apartment. So, but I told her just to ease up and everything. I was just so tired and just uncomfortable living with not only my husband, but, and another man there. So I said, look, why don't we just go and celebrate our first month of being married? And I'm going to have a paycheck coming in and I'm going to have money. And we should treat us for the two of us, I said, for first night, restaurant and a steak dinner, whatever, in D.C. And so he agreed. So we went and we went to D.C. and then John was not dressed for that restaurant. He had jeans on, and they said, "Well, we're gonna let you in, but your boyfriend," they thought it was my boyfriend, the bouncer said, he won't be able to come in. It was a nightclub type of restaurant.
Sure.
So I said, okay. So I said, okay, we decided to go to another bar. Or he decided to go to another bar that, they allow him to get in the way he was dressed up. And so he decided to drink and, tequilas and all kinds of drinks, whatever. I don't know if he knew the difference between not mixing alcohol,
right?
Because it really can get to you.
How old was he at this time?
So he is 2 years older than me.
So he was 20.
So he was 20. No, I was just turned 20.
Okay.
Because my birthday is May 15. I have a birthday coming up. And
that's my daughter's birthday.
Oh, May 15th.
Yeah.
Oh, how sweet.
So fun.
It's Taurus. Sweet girl, by the way. And I just turned 20, and we got married on June 18th.
Okay.
So 1 month after my 20th birthday. And so I still, I wasn't legal to drink. So I didn't really drink a lot because I was afraid. And I'm not a big drinker anyways. But he was old enough to drink. And so he and his brother were the one drinking and a lot. So I said, okay, well, I have to drive because obviously you can't drive. And he insisted. He took the car keys away from me and he wanted to drive. His brother was wasted. I mean, oh my gosh, he couldn't even walk. And
was John pretty drunk too?
And John was drunk. And I said, oh my God. So in the main highway, we were like, going back and forth, left and right, like zigzagging and very aggressively. And some of the cars were honking on us and, just to make us aware that, what are you doing? Whoever's driving is dangerous. I mean, you guys are, a lot of people roll down the window insulting us, giving us the finger, it's just bad. And I was so scared. And so I took the wheel of him because one of those things, he was going too close to a car and, to cause an accident. So when I took the wheel on to kind of maneuver the wheel. He punched me for the very first time in my stomach and in my chest. And I was in shock. And all I did was cry. Yeah, while he was driving with one hand, he just took and punched me that way. And I said, I have no way to say anything. I was such in shock and I was crying. And, the whole way up to when we got home, I was still crying. I just could not believe I was in shock. And so he dragged me out of the car by my hair and continued to beat me up at the apartment.
In front of the brother?
In front of the brother. The brother was passed out. And but it was in front of him. And he wouldn't,
and this was the first time he had ever done anything like this?
Yes.
And was that the first time he had ever been that drunk in front of you?
Yes.
So do you think it had something to do with the alcohol?
I think it has something to do with the alcohol as well, yes. But I don't know if that triggered his anger, whatever it was. So
it must have been shocking that this person that you thought loved you and you loved is all of a sudden this new
my husband.
Yeah.
Right. And so I said his personality totally changed.
Right.
He continued abusing me, and he kicked me in the stomach when we got into the apartment. A police officer sat there because we didn't have any curtains, obviously. So it's the apartment, it's big window. So he was guarding around the apartment area. He was walking around and he saw what was going on. And he decided to knock at the door. And when John opened the door, he thought actually it was his brother coming because he was drunk in the car. He stayed at the car.
He was in the car, yeah.
And so he opened the door because I bet you he would not open the door if he knew there's somebody else or a police officer because he was such a coward, right? And then he opened the door and he saw this man in uniform as a police officer. And he asked, I just saw something going on. I just want to know if she's okay. And he pointed at me. And I was crying. I was, devastated. And I couldn't even talk. It's just embarrassing. It was a shame. I didn't know what to say about that situation or what to even expect from that. But the police officer asked me if I have a place to go for the night, and I said no, I don't have a place to go, but I leave anyways. And I left. I took my car and I slept in the car. Yeah, tried to be safe, and tried to make up something out of the story.
Right,
because I couldn't comprehend why my husband, the one who promised to love me, was doing this to me, was doing such things.
Right.
Abusive physically.
Yeah.
And treating me that way.
So this was the first time, and it's right after you get married, and the brother's now living with you. So you eventually go back, obviously. You go back home.
Yes.
Was he normal? Did he apologize? Was it like a honeymoon phase? I mean, people will ask later, obviously, why you stayed.
Absolutely. So when domestic violence happened, and we have to make awareness of this, what is domestic violence? Domestic violence is based on control. It's rooted on control, and is the perpetrator usually is giving you all, or actually putting all kinds of force on you, whether it's physical and mentally, or physical abuse, emotional abuse towards you. Is control. So they try to always control,
right?
By abusing you in as many kinds of abuse, right? So I said to myself, okay, so this is not going to happen again. We're going to have to talk it over. And of course, he came back and he said, he apologized. He said he will never do it again. He was sorry. And I believed him. I really do. I believed him because I loved him. I was married to him. I thought this was going to be only one incident, and I was scared. And I said, okay, I just, we're just going to have to, be quiet about it. Going to tell anybody what happened.
Right.
And that was it.
So Go ahead.
So it was a honeymoon. Yeah.
Right.
And so I didn't know that another abuse came, and then another honeymoon was coming. You know, that's the cycle of abuse, right?
Right.
So I felt trapped. And
So how much of this cycle, how many years, months, whatever it was, did the cycle of abuse then continue until June 22nd, 1993?
so we were married for 4 years. And during the time, he was leaving me back and forth, and
Going
so
where?
going just
Out?
leave the house,
Okay.
or going back to.
So he wasn't going away for work or something?
No. He was leaving me. Like he will pack his bag, his suitcase, and he will leave.
Saying he was going on a trip, or he would fight with you and say, I'm out of here?
Saying that he would just leave me, that he doesn't like, whatever or whatever. But during the time, anything could trigger him.
Okay.
Anything could be like, for example, if I don't cook right, or if I cook Latin American food, he will expect a hamburger or something like that. Then he will be like, I won't eat this. This is food for whatever Latinos, or I don't eat this. So anything like that, and then.
So it started to become normal that he would fly off the handle.
Yes, he will fly off the handle. Yeah, he will fly off the handle. And, so whatever reason one time was because I think I cooked mashed potatoes and the mashed potatoes were not hot enough. Stupid things like that, my goodness, why don't you talk it over instead of, using physical violence or whatever. So I knew that I was always scared, but I was trying to please him, because as a wife, as a growing up, when I was a child, I saw my mother, my father. My father is very passive. Obviously, he's never abusive. I never see any abuse, from my father. And then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be. I'm a wife. I'm supposed to please my husband. I'm supposed to. So all of this, whether it's religion, my religion was saying, okay, Catholic girls, will now get divorced. Society. I was ashamed, to talk to my coworkers about what happened, whatever incident I have. And then the abuse were not only escalated emotionally and psychological and physically, but until actually forcing sex on me. And so marital rape, right? So
it didn't start that way. It was more physical abuse.
No, it did not start that way.
Hitting, kicking.
Right. But
verbal abuse.
Yeah, verbal abuse, demeaning, belittling you. So it was not economical abuse, though, because I was the one who made more money than him. And so, but I know a lot of women suffer from, economically abuse because they're dependent on their husband to support, and they're dependent. So, but in my case, that was not my abuse. So, but he will take money from my bank account. So in a way, it was abuse, because all the earnings that I had, and I remember the teller. Oh, she was so sweet. I used to do her nails, and I used to bank across the street from, I think it was Bank of America at that time. And so she would be like, you know what? We saw John today, and he took like $300 from your account. And she would tell me that, and I said, oh my God, because she knew that every time I used to call the bank and my checks will bounce because I didn't have enough money. And I said, why I do not have money when I'm the one who putting all this money, every paycheck, every 2 weeks, I had to put my paycheck in the bank to pay for the house, to pay for the bills, to pay for food, and to pay for cars, right? Like they cost money to, gas, electric, whatever. And then it was that kind of thing that eventually we'll fight about it. Why you took money out?
Right.
And it was a legitimate thing, me questioning my husband. What the heck is going on? But he did not like that. He did not like me to question him. What's going on with something so important that is the money. that is not in the bank anymore to pay for the rent of the house, for anything, right, for food. He will take the money and he will buy flowers, and then all of a sudden, in my credit card, right, they took my credit card, and all of a sudden I will have a statement saying a hotel, like the Holiday Inn or whatever. And I said, wait a minute, I was not in the Holiday Inn this weekend. I was not in, or this day, or Friday, or you told me, so he will doing this.
He was doing things behind your back,
cheating and stuff like that. And I said, wow. And so, of course, we were fine about that, because it was a legitimate thing for me to ask as a wife, where have you been?
Right.
Right.
I mean, yes. So it seems like for somebody who didn't really have a stable job, that you were supporting him, he was probably very angry inside about a lot of that, and ended up taking a lot of that out on you.
Well, he didn't like to be questioned either. So, of course, we fight, and then the abuse will be escalating there. And, so I remember.
So how often was it happening?
Gosh, I wasn't really, it was quite often, because, between him not having a job, between him not taking money out of the bank or my account or our account, because it was joint. And between, him doing, stupid things, like, for example, at the Marine Corps, he will go through a wall, and then he will come back angry, and then he said they suspended me because I hit a wall in the car when he was driving or something. And they will do that. The Marines would not put up with them, period. Would not put up with him hitting walls or, making any mistakes, So they will do something like, I don't know what they would do. I guess he was so angry. They would say, just stay home for like a week or something. Or they would just not paying him. So there were problems like that. And then, the abuse, the more intense the problem was, the more intense the abuse was.
Right.
Doesn't make sense.
Of course, 100%.
So,
and then let's briefly talk about the sexual assault. I think it's, back then especially, marital abuse, no one really understood that. And even today, I think, when you bring that up, marital rape, people will say, well, wait a minute, how is that rape? You're married. Isn't that what sex, that's having sex with your spouse. So let's talk about that, because I think right at that time, marital rape was something that was put into law, right? I think in all 50 states that was considered criminal.
Yes.
But there was certain things you had to, categories you had to fall under to make it be considered marital rape. You had to be separated, I think.
Yes, you have to be separated and to be considered separate. Virginia did not have the law to protect women at the time. And like you said, the 50 states did not recognize marital rape in the late 80s, early 90s. And that's just impossible. Who can say that your husband raped you, right? That's ridiculous. But even now, in some of the states, unfortunately, there's terms in the law that's saying, there's your husband raped you. Maybe it's not considerable. Marital rape is a sexual assault, and in level 1, or sexual assault on level 2. And let's just not punish him enough because he is your husband.
Right.
And
as opposed to a stranger.
And even now, right? So in Virginia, when after, my case happened and it was a big talk about, that involving advocates and people who actually wanted to say, hey, feminists, they hang out to that and said, this is the time that we have to come up and say, and say that we need a law to protect women that husbands rape. And so that happened. But he was not charged, he went to trial for a spousal assault, right? And eventually he got acquitted. But before that, people did not consider marital rape as something that, how are you going to present that in court?
Right. And I can imagine it's so hard to prove. I mean, it's behind closed doors.
It was behind closed doors. But that time, that night, the event that put us both on trial and sent me to trial, right? That was the time that we said, hey, you know what? This happened because when they did a rape kit on me, they found out his sperm, right, in my vagina. So obviously something happened. I mean, women can produce sperms. You know, where is this coming from?
Well, I mean, I think the question, and still people, will argue, is it consensual? Is it not? Because you're married.
Right. But there is like a silver lining there, because, you have to find certain things that, how you prove this, what happened.
Right.
Right. And it's very, I know what you're saying. I know what you're trying to say. But in this case, he has been doing this before.
Right.
And, I said that. And the unfortunate thing was that we were not, or the prosecutor was not allowed to present the marital rape, the sexual assault, more than 5 days.
In his case.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll get to that in one second, because that is very important, because he was acquitted. It didn't show the history. Right. So up until the night in question, you guys had been married for how many years?
So it was about 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it sounds like 4 of the years you were enduring the domestic violence.
Yes.
And the sexual assaults. And it had been getting worse and worse. And the cops had been called a number of times.
Yes, that is correct.
And you had been documenting it, getting pictures. And eventually, and we come to see, especially in watching your documentary, which I really didn't know this, but the fact that you had so many witnesses come forward, all of that was forgotten, I think.
Yes.
And the documentary really talks about this unsung hero, and this, person who you happened to be doing her nails, and she noticed bruises all up your arm. And it felt like, from watching your story, that she really saved, the outcome of the case, because she really she could testify that this had happened in the past. It wasn't just on the night in question.
Yes. A lot of people saw bruises on me, a lot of people. And until this day, I'm so grateful that I have so many witnesses. And, we have to have the proven burden of proof.
Yeah.
So we have to.
Yeah.
Yes. And so we also have to make sure the factual events, and collect everything. Every evidence is there to present to the jury. And in my case, it was a lot. It was a lot of evidence. It was a lot of, to present. It was not only the testimonies of the people, the clients that saw me, friends and other people, my clients to saw me, but it was also testimonies of experts, psychologists, psychiatrists, and doctors. So it was a lot to process.
Yeah.
And
did anyone try to step in before the night that it all happens? Did anyone try to stop him, have a conversation with him, have a conversation with you about leaving?
Or
did everybody mind their own business?
So a lot of people mind their own business. But I was telling my neighbors, I said, you know what, I'm ready. I'm fed up. I'm ready to go. And I just don't want to be married anymore. I mean, this is horrible. I don't feel happy anymore. And it's just one neighbor. I remember Miss Ella Jones. She was my neighbor. She was an abused spouse before, and she gave me some pamphlets, some literature on a spousal abuse. And because I remember there was no shelters around that I could go to. There was no resources. in the early 90s. I mean, we're talking about 35 years ago. There was no national domestic violence hotline that I could call.
And your parents weren't here.
And my parents were not here. Right. My parents, there's no home for me to go back. I couldn't go back to Mrs. Castro's house, my cousin's house, and say I have been abused because I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. And victim blaming. It's just really happened. And that's the most important thing, too, that, I was just very ashamed. And I believe that sometimes it's my fault because he used and manipulate me saying that this is your fault or this has happened because of, you question me so much or this and that. And, this is terrible because a lot of women don't have a place to go, but now they do. Now we have shelters, right? Things have changed through the years. So we have done a lot of improvement to save victims of domestic violence and survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. But at the same time, it's like, okay, there's a revolving door that, you leave the abuse and it's a process. And women take up to 7 times to leave their abusive husband or abusive relationship or intimate partner violence because, they don't feel that, or they believe that they can fix again the marriage or if their children, their pets, and they simply love them, or their husband said, I'm going to change or something, and they believe them, or they just economically dependent.
Right, exactly. Okay, so let's talk about that night. Why don't you tell me what you remember? First of all, just quickly tell me, what was your frame of mind that night? I know he went out, right? He went out. You worked late. He went out with his...
I work late. I'm sorry, you were saying...
No.
Okay. So I work very late. I always work late. I had 2 jobs, and I work late, very late, because the salon closes at 8 o'clock. By the time I was home, it was 9 o'clock, 9:30. I was exhausted, so I fall asleep, and obviously he was not home. And who knows where he was? I have no idea.
And you had someone staying with you also that time.
Yes.
You always have people staying.
There's always people. There's always somebody. My sexual life, my marriage sexual life was not normal because there's no way. How can you have, intimate? How could you be intimate with your husband when somebody else is there living with you, right? You just can't. It's just impossible. So, and it's embarrassing. No way. So, there's his friend. He brought his friend, one of his best friends, to live with us. And his name was Robbie. And I said, oh my gosh. So, oh my gosh. So in one apartment, we have 1 bedroom. That apartment had 1 bedroom. Finally, we have a 1-bedroom apartment. Doors and closing doors and everything. So in our living room, he went to Home Depot to buy these plywoods to put up a wall.
Oh my God.
And so, of course, I was like asking what was...
So he wasn't going home anytime soon?
No, exactly. So I said, this is illegal because we're renting and you cannot construct another room in the living room because, this is totally illegal. And so, of course, we're going to have a fight there.
So every time something happened, you would have a fight.
I was like I said, it was like, yes. I mean, I would question things because this is not normal. And he will fight me.
Right.
And I said, no, I can put a wall. And my friend Robbie is going to stay here living with us. And I said, yeah, but, I will have to even move or you guys have to take over the lease. There was a fight for that, too, because I said, I'm not going to be on the lease anymore. You're going to have to sign. And, of course, he didn't have any good credit because he didn't have a job. He was bouncing from job to job, and he never really had a stable income, a stable job. So there was it was arguments because of that. His job, he couldn't retain a job. He didn't make any money. He wasn't a good provider. And then the questions about building up another room in the living room where we're supposed to. So of course we're gonna have arguments, and then he will be freaking out and abuse me physically and rape me. And it's just, a very traumatic experience to be. So I was trying to, walk around eggshells around him.
Right. I see. So that night, you get home late, you were exhausted, you go to sleep. Had you guys, I know that you had bruises already on you because I heard the testimony from the woman who had seen you at the nail salon 2 days before. And so you already had obviously had a very bad beating in, the recent days, whatever it was.
Right.
So, but that night, were you guys fighting? Were you not speaking?
I was not speaking at all because I was exhausted. I said, you know what? This it's not going to go anywhere. I was just going to go ahead and eventually find out a place to live or, on my own, whatever. And that was it, And he comes home at what he says is 3:15 in the morning with his friend. Yeah.
And he gets in bed and he says he doesn't remember much. But what is your recollection of those moments?
So, Rachel, I think you saw the documentary. I made a documentary. I made a movie about it. I don't necessarily have to go to those places because I don't, it's all in the documentary. And people are welcome to
Which
see.
Which people should see.
In prime time, yes. It's Amazon Prime. And I think it's important to that, this new generation also. And I made the documentary and movie because of that, because I wanted to create awareness. I wanted to create something that visual and visualize. I mean, most people are more visual. And it's there for everybody to
the reason
watch.
why I ask, and I understand that, but the reason why I ask is because people, I think, when they hear about what happened, don't understand if there had to be something that happened that moment to you for you to retaliate the way you did. And what we learn later and have learned from you is that this was, battered woman syndrome. It's, it's something that accrued over time and it didn't just happen that moment.
Exactly.
And, the feelings were building up until what you say is you snapped that night. Basically.
I wouldn't necessarily say I know that it's overrated, snap, because the feelings.
What word would you use? I'm sorry, I should have put words in your mouth.
Well, I am not the doctor, I'm not a psychology, but I think is the accumulation of those, feelings. It's just my mind just couldn't take it anymore. My body couldn't take it anymore. The escalations of being diagnosed as a battered woman syndrome. It's just that everything that, and, a lot of people get confused because a lot of people said, okay, so the legal aspect of it will say, okay, so, you have other avenues to take and you could leave, you could do this, you could go away. But the psychological aspect will say something else, that, you always, being a battered woman means that you always live in fear. So something is going to be there. You're always going to have, or being in a survivor mode. A survival mode is when you always live in fear and you learn to cope with those feelings, but you always are afraid. And so, and that was very difficult to understand, even for me, because I didn't, even though I lived through that. I mean, I lived through those episodes of abuse and being a victim of domestic violence and abuse and rape, marital rape. I know that something happened to me, that my body, my mind, I was not in the right mental stage.
Sure.
And so, it's just so much accumulation of that abusiveness.
Well, I think it's interesting because people hear the story and they make judgments or they say what they would have done. Oh, well, if that happened to me, I would have done this. But I don't think anyone could really say what they would do unless they were in that situation.
Absolutely.
Because they just really don't know. And they've probably never been through something that traumatic or to feel the feelings that you felt. And I think it's important for people to remember that you didn't need to have had one occurrence, that night to do such an extreme thing. For you, it was over the course of time and something happened to make you, I don't want to use the word snap again. So something happened to make you act out in a way that you felt like you had no other options. And that's what happened.
That's right. And I think that, it's funny because I always tell my daughter, because, and we tend to judge, right? I mean, and I judge when I was a teenager, of course, but then when being literally judged in the court of law, it teach me a lesson. It teach me not to be more empathic and have sympathy for others as well.
Right.
Because those two things, because not only, I feel the pain, the empathy of an abused woman or a woman or survivor who is going through domestic violence, but I also am sympathetic with them because I know. So I feel the pain, and I know the pain that, these women are living, and even men too, and children, So domestic violence is a social epidemic, as I call it, because it is not only here in the United States, but around the world. And, when I go out with my friends and I see, a table of 4 ladies or four young ladies, and I said, wow, the statistic of 1 out of 4 women is abused or have experienced an intimate partner violence. If that statistic is true, that statistic comes alive right there when I see those 4 girls.
Absolutely.
One of them. So it is very sad that people judge or make judgments because what they heard in the news or what they simply don't know. And it's very important to, and this is what I tell my daughter, I said, before you judge, make sure you know and gather all your factual things. Your facts is important because that makes who you are. Right. And it's a difference between an educated opinion versus an uneducated opinion.
Yeah.
And it's with anything. It's with a person. It's when you wanted to buy a pair of shoes, you try it on, see if you like it, or a TV or a car.
Okay, so Lorena, you could say this with such authority because you've been through it. I say the same thing to my daughter because, in this day and age, it's interesting that so many people want to comment on every subject and want to be a part of it and think that they know about these subjects and have opinions. And they don't know the people. They don't know the story. They've never been through anything remotely like it. And, you see people reading gossip magazines or looking at gossip and reading social media and TikTok and having an opinion, even a political opinion. And, it's so I always am saying to my daughter when I hear them gossiping about whatever, you don't know those people. Right. You don't know why. You don't know if what you're reading is true. You don't know how they felt. You don't know anything about that.
You don't know anything about it.
And when you hear people dislike someone, why? How could you do you know them? Have you spent any time with them? And then when they fall in love with somebody and they're enamored, why? What do you know about that person? So I feel like I'm very similar that I'm always like, you have to have an educated opinion. It's the biggest, that's the biggest thing that I tell people.
Yes, plus it makes who you are. You are representing yourself. And plus I tell her, but just go ahead and be good and represent us well.
Yeah, because, that's true. That's easier.
Because it's just really a matter of who you are. And, look at yourself in the mirror. And before you say something, you just have to understand the whole aspect of it, see the whole picture with the 4 corners, not just, a mirror that is telling you, oh, I heard this and I'm going to make, because they can also, opinions can be misinformative as well.
Of course. So, okay, let me just get back to the night for 1 second, because then, the police get involved, obviously. I'm curious, you were never in jail, were you?
No, I was never in jail.
So John never pressed charges? Is that how that, I don't understand. Because if that happened now, I feel like that person would be in jail immediately.
So the way how it went was that my friend took me to the magistrate, and then, obviously, she was doing the speaking. I wasn't even reading the Miranda rights. Like you had the right of an attorney or something. That's what a lot of things happened. It got complicated because I say things that it was misunderstood and it was not completely And I should have had an attorney present because of my broken English and the way how I can spread. And they were interrogating me when I was at the hospital.
At the police station.
The question,
Okay.
I was just, and it let me go, and it was very late at night, so I left, but he said you have to go to the hospital, and during the time that I was in the hospital to get it was ironic because we're in the same hospital. He was in the other side of the hospital. I was in the other side of the hospital. So he was obviously being treated for, his, dismembered of his penis.
Yeah.
I try to be gently.
Right. They were trying to reattach him.
Yeah, I don't know how.
At this point, I'm just curious,
Right.
like, were you asking about, were you like, is he okay? Were you were angry?
So no, I was not. I would not use angry because I was more in shock. I was scared, and I didn't know the outcome of the situation, which just happened.
Right.
Because at this point, I still didn't know what happened.
Right.
But it was only, two people involved, and one person is injured this way. Obviously, it's obviously, then the other person did it, right? So I put this two and two together, and I said, okay, well, I did this. And I was interrogated by the police officer, and so many questions flowing around while, I was naked and not naked that the police officer would see my body, but I was just, with a hospital robe that they give you, just very, and it was intimidating, and I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't understand many things. So it was very difficult for me to go through that.
So eventually your names get released in the paper, which is where I think the story really turns. Because obviously you were dealing with your own turmoil, the shock, the confusion, the figuring out what's going to happen next legally and with your husband, right? But then, a news outlet releases your names, and then your life, I'm assuming, changed. What happened from that moment on? I mean, you became a joke. You became a headline.
So, yes,
And international level, not just in your little town.
No, it was just like all over. It was amazing. It was people around my house with cameras, and when I came back during the whole time, it was an explosion of something. Remember, we did not have the internet. I'm sorry, there was something called the World Wide Web, which is, but we didn't have Google. We didn't have social media. Times were different. And even though times were different back then, it was a big deal. It was a sensationalism of everything. And my picture was all over. It was, the news who circle around the globe, the whole world. It was I never really expect that. I thought it was me and my husband issues only. And all of a sudden, I find myself in the middle of this speculating and tabloids and jokes. And
And I just want to remind people that this was a time when tabloid news was like really at the forefront. It was just becoming something big. And it was stories like, I think it was a little bit after you or maybe during, but Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan and the Menendez brothers, killing their parents and, all sorts of different things that were, Amy Fisher and Joey Buttafuoco.
Oh, yes.
All these things that were, huge stories that the public could not get enough of. So your story was, even more thrilling for people because it was like, it was so crazy, but at the same time, you started to see women that would say, oh, she did what I wish I could do. But would never imagine that I, could get away with. So it was, everyone had their own opinion, and men were cringing and women were either cheering you on or maybe making other judgments. But how did you get through that? What, you were living, you went and lived with your boss. Is that where you ended up?
So, you're right. I mean, you hit the nail right in the head because, times were very difficult where the tabloids have a free-for-all, and it was very commercialized, and that's what they wanted to sell, make more money off. And most of the editors were men,
right?
And the men tell the women what to do, even though the women wanted to write decent stories and focus on domestic abuse. The narrative was totally changed into more focus into him losing his penis, and so domestic violence was really overshadowed, right? And that's when the activists and advocates decided to grab this story and really fight it over. And, I remember VAWA, the Violence Against Women's Act, it didn't exist for me because, it was more like brand new, and President Biden, which was Senator Biden at that time from Delaware, was just the beginning of drafting this act, right, to protect women. And in my case, I will say my case was instrumental for activists and for people who were trying to make laws and pass legislation for the government to protect women. And so that did not came after, in 1994, it came after like 6 months after my trial, which I think it was a landmark for changing the laws and protecting women in this country. So I think something good came out of it, even though it was a lot of tabloid, and I was vilified, and I was diminished to a cartoon, you were
reduced to,
and I was reduced to a cartoon, and it was a joke.
God,
and it was dehumanized, and this is what the court of public opinion come in, and this is what I think that the public needed to be more educated, and this is exactly what I have done: documentaries to gather the factual events and say, hey, this is the proof that this is what happened. Watch it,
right? And well, I think, and that's what the important part of the lesson is that people looked at it as she was crazy, and he must have done something to deserve it, but no one deserves that. And then if they talked a little bit more, well, why didn't she just leave? This is terrible. And then they kind of forget about the story. It's like funny, Howard Stern made a huge joke, Geraldo, seemed to be a complete nightmare back then, and not, just wanted to get you, in front of the mic because getting you as as an interview, they just wanted to find out, how you did it, and, why you did it, and not really to see the why, but like, why it happened that night, And I think that that's what people eat up, but they literally forget the rest of it, that there is so much bigger of a story. And you've made your life's mission about helping people and getting the recognition and understanding what domestic violence is. I just want to get back to one thing about the case, because both of you, were charged with something, right? And
yes.
I think people also forget that he was charged and he was acquitted, but it was a shorter amount of time they had to prove. And, did that make you nervous that he was acquitted? Did that make you nervous for your trial, thinking, well, if they found him innocent, I'm going to be the guilty one?
Yes, it was very much, because I said, well, he's acquitted already. So I was not sure where my case is going to go.
Yeah.
And so it's not looking good for me.
With the jury, it's public opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
And so even the jury, I'm sure that they're not supposed to, watch the news or something, but I'm sure, it was impossible.
There's no way
it was impossible.
Somebody didn't see that.
Right.
Yeah.
It was impossible not to. So exactly. So, and it was everywhere, right? And it was overwhelming.
And before your court case, John went on like a media tour.
Yes.
Doing porn and all sorts of crazy things, right? To make even more of a joke.
Right. He even operated himself to make his penis bigger.
Oh, that's right.
Or enlargement. I mean, so obviously, he was enjoying
like deform him or something?
Yes. I mean,
so the news didn't stop, is the point.
Yeah, exactly.
And the jokes didn't stop.
No, never. Right. And so, and the worst thing is that, how could you joke about something a tragic, a traumatic story on a human being,
right?
On a woman. How could you make that a joke? I mean, and so I started to feel very isolated, alone, and so, but the more I saw activists and advocates to advocate against domestic abuse and sexual assault, I felt that it was necessary to me that, hey, you know what? I'm just going to walk with my head high, and this is not, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to become an activist and advocate, and I'm just going to do my speeches about, against domestic violence and marital assault, sexual assault, and all of this. And I empower myself with, doing that. And that's what I do, and I created a Lorena Gallo Foundation, which, the mission is to help domestic violence victims to be away from it through education and community engagement, and also resources to actually help this woman, which is very important for them to escape domestic abuse or any relation of abusive they are with their children, if they have children as well. So I think it's very important for women, to empower themselves and help other women, because this is a matter of, of helping each other. And also, we're never going to reach gender equality if we don't, help each other.
Right.
And to put this in an awareness, as a domestic violence is a social epidemic. And so we have to create more awareness in order to continue this battle against domestic abuse.
What do you think is most misunderstood about domestic violence?
Many factors. I think the misunderstood is that they don't understand why people don't leave.
Right.
Why they stayed in a domestic violence situation. It's easy for me to judge or to say, hey, if you're abused, then you just pick up and leave. It's not easy. It's a process, right? And we just talk about it. It takes women up to statistically 7 times to leave, because it's a revolving door. And
don't they say it's more dangerous to
it's dangerous? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you have to be very careful with that, because women live in fear, and the women who live in fear, they're always leaving.
Right.
So, but there's also they're going back, and that's the trick part of it. And the most dangerous part is to actually knowing that, the perpetrator, your abuser knows that you're leaving, and they are going to lose that control over you.
Right.
And that
makes them even more angry.
What's making more angry and makes him more dangerous, because if he knows that you're leaving him, then he's not going to have control over you.
Right.
He's not going to manipulate you anymore. So it's taking away his control. And then he can come back and kill you. Right. Or, there's a lot of women who have left the abusive relationship, and their abusive husbands have gone through their work and also kill innocent people. So not only kill you, but and sometimes they even kill themselves, after they commit the murder, suicide. But and the police are in danger too, because there's they don't know what to expect in a domestic violence situation when they go, and they even say that they fear to go to a call of domestic violence, but they have to do it because it's their duty, right? They have to as a police officers. But it's very important to know that women who are trying to leave domestic violence situation, they are very endangered.
Right.
Very.
I want to circle back to one thing, because your case really brought up the facts of marital rape, but it also, you pled, you were fighting your charge on temporary insanity due to battered women's syndrome, correct? Is that how? Yeah. And you won. You were acquitted. I mean, I don't know if won is the right word, but you were acquitted. How did that feel going through that trial? Just really briefly. Were you scared?
I was very scared and very uncertainty for me, because I didn't know what was going on. But I was offered a plea bargain, and I did not take the plea bargain because why? Because I felt that at that time, I felt that, okay, it doesn't matter if I go to jail or not. It was my time of to tell the story. It's my time to tell the world what happened. I had to tell the truth. And so I was doing it because it was very important for me. And then I realized I'm not alone, because all the support that I have when in the court, outside of the court, by the way, until this day, I'm very thankful for that, for the support that I have. And
those shots, you can still see them today of
yes.
people cheering for you and you smiling.
Yes, that helped me a lot. And I'm very grateful until this day. I thank them, all of them, because they helped me to go through that. Every time I step into that court building and to the courtroom, it helped me. It gave me, strength. And I was really appreciative of that. And even though, it happened a long time ago, I still feel the loving of people.
Yeah. Also, with the plea deal, if you had taken it, it would have affected your citizenship, correct?
Correct. And so he was threatening me, and this is very important now that I'm glad that you mentioned, because a lot of women, immigrant women, do not report cases of domestic abuse because of the same fact that they are in a situation of immigrant, right? The status is compromised by and is used against you when your perpetrator is taking or threaten you to tell you, oh, I'm going to call the police and you're illegal and I'm going to order them deportation and you're going to go back to your country. So he's using and manipulating you against you. And it is very sad that he have control over that. So see, again, domestic violence is a control, is a behavior, is a pattern of behavior that the abuser is using you to control you and to manipulate you. And not only that, but he used gaslighting and coercive control, which is part of the. I'm very happy to talk about the coercive control because. Senator Susan Rubio from California, approached me and called me and said, I'm working on this bill to pass to Congress, and I want you to help me with this. So I was helping and I'm so proud that I did that. And I have a copy if you wanted to read about that. The original, of course, is in my wall frame.
Oh, I love that.
Because because I helped pass that law, of course, to control with Senator Susan Rubio from California. God, and it was amazing.
So good.
Yeah.
So just quickly, there's the iconic, video of you standing up as they're reading the verdict. What did you think before the moments before they said guilty or not guilty?
What I thought, right when the lady come up to read the verdict? Okay, so I am glad that you asked me that question, because no one have asked me that question, first of all, and because I did not know what to expect. I just hoped for the best. And it was my life, whether I'm going to go for 20 years to prison, because that was the sentence if I was going to get convicted.
Or go home.
Right. And so I saw this lady, and she is smiling. And when they said, the judge asked her, are you reached, you guys reached the juror reached the verdict? And she said yes, with a smile in her face, And I said, oh my God, so that's good news. And I catch that up on her. And when she read it, not guilty, the verdict, it was a big, even more relief for me.
Yeah.
But I knew that once I saw her smiling,
right, you had it.
I knew it. I said, oh my God, God is great, because, this is what the truth literally set you free. And I said, I have basically a relief, but I didn't walk out of the door, the front door of the court. I went to the back of the door on the courtroom. And so that was confusing too, because I did not know. But because I was acquitted by reason of temporary insanity, I have to go through a series of evaluations,
Right.
and to a psychiatric hospital. So I went there to Central State for 45 days, and in part I felt that it was a relief from the media. I remember Barbara Walters wanted to interview me. They sent a helicopter, to go around Central State, the hospital, and it's like they never leave me alone, right? And so, in anything for a tabloid story that was there. And so, thank God I went there. I did my 45 days in the hospital, and I was at peace. I was at peace with myself. I was at peace with having this therapy, coming from the state for the therapist, for the doctors.
Your life could now start over.
And I knew that I could have the opportunity to restart my life again. And that's basically it is. But I tell you, it was not always happy after all that, after the release and everything. I did struggle. I know a lot of people say, oh yeah, she's fine after, she's not guilty. She went to have her therapy. No, it wasn't like that. It was a very struggle to find jobs because everybody, first of all, recognized me.
Yeah.
I couldn't go to the grocery store without me being recognized. I couldn't go, to a restaurant or, to eat something, to a coffee place to have a cup of coffee because it was difficult. And I have some setbacks and I have more hurdles to go through and bumps to go through because, finding a job was difficult.
What kind of job did you end up getting?
Well, I wanted to be, the same thing, a manicurist.
Okay.
And, that's what I
what you knew. Yeah.
That's what I knew, and that's what I needed to do for. So go back to manicurist. And so it was very difficult. I know that I was, and I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it because I want people to know what really happened. So to me, as a woman and being vilified by the media, of course, people are going to, recognize me everywhere I go. So I said, I'm going to have to give it a shot. But I had the opportunity to go back to work, not as a manicurist, but in a law firm. And, this man offered me a job. And while I was there, I was actually didn't realize that he was using me. Every time I go, like he will invite me to a restaurant and then, he will go with me just to be seen with him and to take advantage of. And then on top of that, he make sexual advances. And I was like, this is pathetic. This is horrible. I just came from a trial.
Right.
I just came from a traumatic event in my life, an extraordinary event of my life. And then this.
Right. It's like your own personal Me Too situation after the fact. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, really?
Yeah.
Really? This happening again? I mean, being victimized by this person?
Yeah.
It's great they offer me the job, but
you have to accept all that to keep the job.
Yes. And also, not only that, but I didn't know that was some kind of condition or something, and so it was terrible. He never, it is.
So and did you end up leaving?
Yes, I ended up leaving. And so I went back to being, manicure.
Yeah.
My friend tried to help me, and she knew knew the owner and everything. And friends, it's good to know people because then. So
sometimes your name will work.
Yes, yeah. Sometimes it does, but it was a struggle to go back and to work. And I stayed at the job as much as I can. And then I end up, when my parents came from Venezuela, I end up, helping them to find jobs there too.
Right.
So it was
amazing.
Good. Yeah.
Just a few more questions. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, how did you date after the fact? Was that hard? Were you on dating apps?
No, there was no dating apps.
Oh, okay. Fine.
It was the early 90s.
Okay.
So there's
Have you ever been on a dating app?
I've never. I've been with my partner, David, for for actually 30 years now. And we have a daughter. Yes. I never get married.
Okay.
I mean, he did. He said, and I said, we should plan our wedding. And he was like, oh yeah, I'll show up.
30 years. That's amazing.
Yes.
So, but did you date a few people before him, or he was your one and only?
No, I did not date anybody because it was such a traumatic experience.
Well, of course, yeah.
So I never really had the time to. I said, I'm just gonna take care of myself. My family is here from Venezuela. I'm just gonna, just try to help myself to live a normal life.
And did he already know who you were? So you didn't have to explain it?
So I went to college. I went back to college, and I met him at college.
Okay.
Community college. And so he was in one of my classes. He was in history, and we took social. I think it was like what's the class? Anyways, it was a communication class. And so he was there, and so we started as a friend, and our friendship grew into respect grew into love, and we are here now. We have a daughter. Love just
But at the beginning, he could joke with you about it. He could handle it. He could
handle it. He never joke or make anything because he
knew how serious.
Smart. I mean, and so he never asked anything or nothing like that. And it was basically a nice, natural, beautiful relationship, like it should be. In a healthier,
So so that's interesting. So he knew the seriousness of it. He didn't want to be part of the jokes, but he understood who you were beyond those headlines.
Yes.
So it wasn't something you needed to discuss.
No. And as a matter of fact, one of his best friend served as a jury for his trial.
Oh my goodness.
It was such a small world.
Wow.
Yes.
Interesting.
I know.
And your daughter is how old now?
She's 18.
Wow.
Yes.
And what do you tell your daughter when people find out who her mother is?
I think she's very smart, first of all, and kids are very smart. They just Google it. And I mean, she went when the documentary come up, obviously, but they were filming at my home, and it was like a Hollywood, kind of lights and everything.
Yeah, of course.
So obviously she was there with her friends, and I have to move her, because she was just like so young and, teenagers, and everything had to be quiet, because of the filming and stuff. But, I mean, she knew, and just a simple Google. And when she went to Sundance, the Sundance Festival, she was troubled with me and David, of course. And, she saw parts of the documentary because we were actually, that's where we try to promote, marketing. We have to do this marketing. So they were showing it in different areas, and what's it called? The city, Salt Lake City. Right?
Okay.
So we went to Utah, and so we were there, and when we came back to the hotel, she told me, "Mom, I didn't realize how strong you are," because, and that just kind of really, oh my gosh, it's just I get emotional because she understands, those the part of me, my life, right? So before she was born,
of course,
and so that was very special.
And so she could see you as a survivor and someone to be proud of,
which she does.
I love that. Okay. Have you ever spoken to John?
No. Do
you have any desire to?
No.
I don't. I think it's interesting, and it's an interesting question. People have asked me to ask you that because when your name is connected with somebody, in John and Lorena Bobbitt, as it is, and the story is so connected, I think people wonder if naturally you have not an affinity. That's a horrible word, but naturally you want to find out what happened to them. Naturally, you need some closure. Naturally, for people, you might not need closure at all. That might be something so terrible that you cannot be a part of. So I think that that's why people wonder, because they wonder if you ever became, in a space where you could have some closure, or if you even felt you needed it.
No, not necessarily. I don't have any. I mean, if I heard something in the news, because obviously he once an abuser, always an abuser. He actually beat up a lot of women, and he went to jail for, being abusive again to his girlfriend and his wife and another girlfriend. So he was actually sharing, in the same jail. I think it's Love or something like that. It's in Nevada, with O.J. Simpson was. It was at the same jail. So he went there for not too long. John was for, again, abusive relationships. So,
And he's just been in the news recently for like losing his toes or something. I mean, clearly he hasn't had the easiest life since.
well, it's kind of sad because, it's, now I guess, once he drank the water and when he was in Camp Lejeune and, obviously they said that the water there was so bad that it make some kind of illness that the circulation, that's why he lost his 10 toes and now he walks with a limp. But, it's life.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to lose any part of your body. And it's sad that, people go, at some point, you're going to have some illness that is going to compromise your health.
Yeah.
But, I just feel sorry.
The Me Too movement, it had happened before your story. Do you think people would have looked at you differently?
I'm sorry, what was the last question?
Meaning the Me Too movement where people finally started to believe women or see that there was a real movement in terms of what you were talking about with your boss, let's say, that people had to do things to keep their job. Even in your situation with John, do you think that people would have said, well, there must be more to this story. Let's look into what happened to her as opposed to her just cutting off a penis?
So any time that we have in our society, we have a movement like the Me Too movement, it's very important to realize, and that actually come to actually, have the workers and especially Hollywood women who actually, accuse their directors of sexual harassment and have them hold accountable for what they did. And that's what happened with the Me Too movement. I am so happy that, I'm so humble that a male reporter from England was telling me, he said, Lorena, I see you as the mother of the Me Too movement. And I said, wow, that's kind of odd because, and I have no really answer to that. But it was that whole thing. So every time that women are involved in such a tragedy and we have to make something good come out of it, it doesn't have to be a tragedy for women to advance and certain, do you know what I mean?
Of course.
And so it doesn't have to be that way. Why? So I am glad that we have, my case serve as an instrumental, situation to help change laws around the countries and in not only here in the United States, but in the world, because a lot of things, we have this conversation of domestic abuse and, awareness and the conversations going on and on. But also when the Me Too movement came, I was very happy and, to hear that women have some sort of protection.
Yeah.
And not only the Me Too movement, but the Why I Stayed, the campaigns in social media, the Why I Stayed and Why I Left and why I didn't left. And so it really come to that, to be able to see what our society is doing. And, there's so much more that we can do. It's like we have made so many changes in the laws to protect women, but there's so much more work to be done.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
And so every time that I feel that we have changed a lot of things, we take one step forwards, but we also take 2 steps back. And sometimes the loss is more catered to the perpetrator than women. And when it's just the case of when women go and fight custody for children, especially when they are in an abusive situation, or when they have immigration situations when there is a child involved that, the perpetrator held that against you and said, you're going to be deported, and then children are involved, and the mother has to be out of the country, and who knows if you're going to see the child again or not.
Right.
So it's very sad that the laws have to be more, those gaps on the law and the legislation have to be closed. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
Yeah.
Last two questions. Did you ever become an American citizen?
Yes, I'm so proud.
When did that happen?
Oh my God. When did that happen? That happened, sorry, my allergies. That happened when, right after my trial.
Amazing.
Yes.
That must have felt terrific.
Yes, it felt like, so proud. More than proud. It was a dream come true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very interesting that you had this passion to be an American citizen, so much so that you wouldn't take the plea deal. You wanted to prove your story. You wanted to have your own voice.
Yes.
Even so, now that you're an American, you do live with the stigma. You do live with this story, but you are still, you would rather keep that than not be an American. I think that's kind of powerful too.
Yes, I think, thank you. And I think it's very important to know that, domestic violence still has a stigma among society. People, it's like a hush-hush, type of conversation that you never talk about it. You portray a perfect social media and the pictures with your loved ones and everything, but behind those doors, you never know what's going on. And I think it's very important to destigmatize domestic abuse by making it aware of what's happening, obviously, and instead of being a taboo or being a stigma still. And yes, I always know that I'm gonna live with that on that shadow, always gonna follow me no matter what. It's like a scar, like a scar that never goes away. Like if you have a tattoo, for example, it's you had to really erase it and whatever, but that's never gonna go away.
But maybe it's like a war wound that you can use for good and be proud of.
Yes.
And learn the lesson from.
Yes, and that's
important.
Thank you so much. But I also wanted to say that I use it as a positive in every time a positive situation comes up. I'm glad to use my platform because that's what, my name have become a brand name.
Yes.
And so I can actually market it in that way. For, look, I mean, I am an advocate of against domestic abuse and sexual assault. And I'm so proud that, I do have a foundation and I'm working, this is what I do for a living. I do speeches. And, before COVID, that's exactly what I was doing. I was going to colleges and universities to talk and do my speeches. But COVID ruined it all for all. And so the pandemic, right? And it's like I said, and then we learned to do it in Zoom meetings and stuff like that. But it's not the same. It's not the same connection that you have when you have this people asking you question. And I love that connection instead of seeing in a monitor, a computer monitor. It's some of them they're young and. And I call them kids. I know I shouldn't say that, but they're young and they just decided to turn it off because it's boring. But it's important for them to learn, right? Because it's such an important issue for them, especially in college, to learn about healthy relationships.
Oh, for sure. Right. I was going to ask you what you want your legacy to be. From hearing you speak, it really sounds like you want to be known for your work in domestic violence.
I do.
And changing the narrative and the importance of using your voice and telling your own story. But I don't want to speak for you, but just hearing you, it's very evident to me that that's what, should be your legacy. What would you like your legacy to be? What would you like to be known for?
I am proud to do what I do as an advocate against domestic abuse. And I'm very humble, and I am so happy that I made that as my mission. It's a personal thing. I lived through that, and I went through it. I walked those shoes of domestic abuse. I walked the shoes of being sexual assaulted by my husband. I walked those shoes, and look, I mean, it's very important to bring for me, through my foundation, it's very important to bring the dignity of a victim who is trying to escape domestic abuse and survivors of domestic abuse. I think it's very important that, I will say one of the futures, and this is what we're trying to put together, a business plan of through the foundation, of course, to offer a women's center that, again, I can offer legal support to women who are escaping domestic abuse. I can offer mental health because they need it so much. It's very important, and this women try to escape an abuse, and the relationship it's very important that they are treated, and they're in the mental stage that they need psychological help. Right. And so I will offer that when I have my women's center. And of course, a shelter in the future is in the future, an emergency shelter. So women don't have the means to go, and that's why they stay in a relationship. And it's important to me to make that a mission to bring back, like I said, the dignity of this woman, that they deserve so much because I was there.
Yeah.
And it's a personal to me to say that I never forgotten the trauma that I lived through my abusive husband, but I also never forgotten what victims go through. And so to me, that will be it. That will be what I will wish to do.
Okay, so people can learn more about you by watching Lorena on Prime Video. Is there anything else where people can reach you? Tell us where we can find out more about your foundation.
Yes, it's Lorena Gallo Foundation, and they can click as www.Lorena Gallo Foundation. And you can actually see, my organization there is a website. And if they wanted to donate or something, there's a click button to donate.
Okay.
And I very much thank you.
We will put a link on this.
Yes, please.
To donate.
Listen, if I'm very proud to also, I did a public, not public broadcast, I'm sorry, public service announcement.
Okay.
And, that's there for, if you are in a dangerous situation, if you feel like your life is in danger, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. If you could please put a link on that.
Absolutely.
And it's very important to know that you are not alone, and speak up and speak out.
You're amazing. I really wish you the best. I can't wait to see what you do in the future. Last question. Are you on Instagram where people can follow a little bit about your personal life, or do you not do social media?
No, I'm glad you asked that, because I took a break from social media.
Okay.
Yeah, for protection, for my family, my friends. There was a time that it was really bad, that they can actually steal pictures, and no matter what you put pictures on social media, they just try to get it through friends and family, and they make up some stories, and that was not fair. So I decided to just take a break for a little from social media.
Well, I'll reiterate, everyone should watch the docuseries, Lorena. It was so good. I watched it in one sitting. It's 4 parts.
It's 4 parts.
Fascinating.
Yes.
You learn so much. Again, you think you know the story, but you don't.
No.
And it is so, I was, rooting for you, and I'm still rooting for you.
Thank you so much. And also, there's a movie. It's called I Was Lorena Bobbitt. It's by Lifetime Network, and so please watch that too.
Absolutely.
And there's a upcoming. I'm working in a documentary, but it's not going to be here in the United States. Unfortunately, it's going to be overseas.
Okay.
And in Europe. So
amazing. So people can find it in Europe. Okay.
So,
terrific, Lorena. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for listening to Misunderstood. I'm your host, Rachel Yucatel. Please be sure to subscribe to the show and give us a 5-star rating and review. You can support the show by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/misunderstood with Rachel Yucatel. Do you have ideas for the show or want to reach out? Email us at info misunderstoodpodcast@gmail.com. That's spelled MISS understood. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.